10 myths about the M16. Myth number 1. It jams a lot. The M16 got off to a rough start because it was issued piecemeal without a proper training or maintenance program. Initially, the Army gave it to highly trained Special Forces troops. They understood some of its idiosyncrasies and took good care of it. Ergo, it proved popular. Once it was issued to conventional combat troops, most of whom had not been trained on it, problems arose. Some bad decisions have been made, including the elimination of the gun's chrome barrel and chamber. The chrome chamber was needed to ensure reduced friction and smooth operation. There are stories that then Secretary of Defense McNamara himself ordered the chroming process stopped to reduce cost. This resulted in failures to extract the empty shell casing, effectively rendering the gun useless. There was a shortage of cleaning kits, training, and general operational understanding of the gun by regular troops early on. There was also a rather complicated issue with the gunpowder used. In short, the powder being used was dirtier than what the gun was designed for, which only complicated matters. Within 2 years, these issues were all addressed, and along with other small improvements, the guns became reliable. But since the guns were rushed into mass service without sufficient training and logistical support, they gained a reputation for unreliability that followed the gun to this very day. Myth number 2. The Army didn't want the M16. Like many myths, this one has some truth to it. There was considerable resistance to the adoption of the M16, but many in the Army did want it. Although it had to prove itself to the conservative Army brass, it actually had many champions, especially in the Special Forces and elite combat units. The M14 was rapidly being deemed too big and heavy for practical use in the jungles of Vietnam. The M14 was also limited by the weight of its ammunition. A 16.5-pound combat load for the M14 was just about 120 rounds versus 240 rounds for the M16. In the close and intense firefights of the jungle, the extra ammunition could be critical. Lieutenant Colonel Hal Moore praised the gun after the Battle of the Ia Drang Valley and reportedly even said that if his men had been equipped with their old M14s, they may have been overrun. Myth number 3. The bullet created massive wounds by tumbling. This myth was widely held for a long time, but it was later determined to be inaccurate. The original 55-grain bullet of the M16 created disproportionate wound channels in enemy soldiers because the thin metal jacket over the lead core tended to fragment easily. The resultant wounds were far more devastating than could have been anticipated. The bullet does tumble on impact, but so do most bullets. It was learned that after about 300 yards, the bullet was less likely to fragment due to hitting at a lower velocity, but in Vietnam, most combat was well within that distance. When the Army changed over to a slightly heavier steel core bullet, the penetration of the round improved, but the actual stopping power was reduced. Modern issue ammunition has managed to maximize both penetration and create a large wound channel, but the tumbling myth dates back to the original ammunition. Myth number 4. The 5.56 millimeter round is inaccurate beyond 300 meters. This myth got started partly because the Army quit requiring 400-meter qualification, but the reality is that the Army officially stated that the round was effective to 460 meters, with some tests showing it was effective out to 600 meters. The reduction in qualification standards was simply a pragmatic matter. The Army's research showed that it was not worthwhile, since small arms battles rarely, if ever, take place at those ranges. It should be noted that with modern military ammunition, the M16 has made kills out to 800 meters. Myth number 5. The M16 was originally an Air Force gun. Although the M16 was originally adopted by the Air Force, it was championed by many senior Army officials who knew that a new caliber was needed for the universal infantry weapon. That was the impetus for the development of the 5.56 millimeter round to begin with. There was a myth that the Air Force wanted a gun that was effective against humans but not destructive to equipment. The M16 was not selected for its inability to damage equipment, but for its effectiveness and lightweight. Myth number 6. The AR-15 can easily be converted into an M16. It is extremely difficult to convert a semi-automatic AR-15 into a fully automatic gun. It requires proper machine tools, the ability to fabricate or highly modify steel parts, and an intricate knowledge of the gun's design and operation. Myth number 7. The M16 has no recoil. Although the M16 does have a light recoil, Newtonian physics requires that it has some recoil. The buffer spring, being in a straight line with the barrel, and the compensating flash suppressor both help to absorb and reduce the recoil felt, making the M16 very controllable, but it does have recoil. Myth number 8. The M16s were made by the Mattel Toy Company. The original M16s had some plastic parts made by Mattel, as they were the leader in plastics at the time. Mattel also made a fairly good-looking toy M16. The combination of these things caused the gun to be derisively called the Mattel Toy, even though Mattel did not make the guns. Regardless, it is a name that occasionally still crops up. Myth number 9. You cannot own a real M16. Although some states do have restrictions, there is no actual federal prohibition in owning a real M16. It is a Class 3 gun, which means the transfer must be approved by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, along with a $200 tax stamp, but it is handled just like any other fully automatic gun transfer. And myth number 10. The M16 is a .223. Although the NATO 5.56mm cartridge is nearly identical in many ways to the commercial .223 ammunition, they are not exactly the same. The NATO round is made to very specific case length, wall thickness, and with a specific chamber pressure, bullet weight, and design. Commercial .223 ammunition is made to a wide variety of bullet weights, shapes, projectile types, chamber pressures, and propellants. Although it is generally safe to shoot commercial ammunition through an M16, there is no guarantee that it will function properly. Well, I hope you enjoyed these few little tidbits on the myths of the M16. This is Captain Max of Fun with Guns. Take care and be safe. Drops out easier. Yeah.
You can tell it's Mattel. It's swell.